If you've been paying to the diversity, equity, and inclusion field anytime in the last 5 years or so, you might have noticed the up-and-coming addition to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, which includes belonging. And while in that same span of years there have been additional terms added to DEI, including accessibility and justice, that I don't necessarily have problems with, belonging I very much do. Anyone who follows me on multiple platforms know that I am very active, in particular on LinkedIn. There is a thriving culture of DEI practitioners on LinkedIn contributing to each other's posts and having a lot of great thought leadership amongst each other and with non-DEI practitioners. So that's where the heart of my content lives. And I have very slowly started being more and more explicit and more often expressing my dislike of belonging and honestly now my outright rejection of the term. Now, I have had a number of other DI practitioners who have either resonated with what I'm sharing or are taking it in strides for consideration. However, there are a number of folks who do stand by the concept of belonging, thinking that it is the ultimate goal of diversity work, inclusion work, equity work. However, the two big things that are sticking points for me that I just cannot get on board with belonging as a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion is one, every time I have tried to find a definition that is definitive of what belonging is as compared with diversity, equity, and inclusion. In particular, inclusion, the only things about belonging that I actually genuinely resonate with and find valid are all the things that I would very much make the case fall under inclusion. We don't need a new term. The things that they're describing are inclusion. And secondarily, under the systems of society that we currently have, particularly capitalism and extraction of human lives in order to make a profit, there is no world in which it is in any way ethical to push employees to feel a sense of belonging at their place of work. I feel like that's just pushing further along very toxic standards, very similar to we're like a family company culture, to the point where I call belonging the rebrand version of we're like a family culture. And from a workplace perspective, from leadership trying to push belonging, it's very like a nebulous feeling of liking your workplace and just feeling good about it. To me, given the capitalistic standards that we are under, given the rampant microaggressions, the constant major layoffs from different companies in different sectors, with people getting laid off with absolutely no notice, whether they're a stellar employee, whether they're just a subpar employee. I've seen people get laid off whether they worked at a company for a couple of years, but also people who've been there a decade and longer who just all of a sudden cut. People getting cut before major holidays, people being cut before or during their maternity leave or disability leave or something like that. Companies have absolutely no loyalty, and to me, belonging is just another way for companies to try and like put a lot of glitter all over their talent operations, their people management, and not actually do anything substantial about respecting the rights of their employees, especially if they are using belonging as a way to dodge diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which is much easier and more direct at tracking the data around the goal setting for especially inclusion and equity work, and as well as holding people to task and holding people accountable for the harm that they have caused. Belonging, because you can't track a good fluffy feeling of just liking your employment and it's all completely subjective, how on earth are you supposed to track it? You can't. But having said that, whether you work in DEI or some associated human resources kind of field, or if you're just a direct report, regular employee at your company, I would be very interested to hear what are your thoughts on belonging.